For the first time since its independence, Kenya will not be represented at the United Nations General Assembly in New York. Kenya's ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations, Mr. Macharia Kamau, through a statement, informed UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon that Kenya would not be represented at the high-level week of the 68th session of the UN General Assembly. The statement cited that President Kenyatta could not be out of the country at the same time as the Deputy President William Ruto. Ruto is currently at The Hague attending the hearings of a case in which he is charged with crimes against humanity. Meanwhile, the second Vice President of the International Criminal Court and Judge Kuno Tafuse has responded on behalf of the ICC presidency to a letter from the chairpersons of the African Union and the African Union Commission. The letter addressed various aspects of the ongoing ICC proceedings involving Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto. Tafuse says, quote, "The presidency has no legal powers to consider arguments and concerns related to ongoing cases and that such matters should be raised before the relevant chambers." End quote. Judge Tafuse has also stressed that the judges of the court must take all their decisions in accordance with the mandate and legal framework established by the states that created the court, including the 34 African states that are party to the Rome Statute. Now, for more details on Kenya skipping the UN General Assembly, we're joined in studio by Manoa Esepisu, Kenya presidential spokesperson. Welcome to Africa Live.
Thank you.
Now, this is the first time, as we mentioned, in 50 years that Kenya will be skipping the General Assembly. Can you give us greater detail on exactly how the president came to that decision?
Oh, well, the president made that decision with a grave heart, obviously, but he has consistently said that he and the deputy president would not be out of the country at the same time. I think that the Constitution demands that unless there is really an moving event that would necessitate that, then I think it's very clear within our laws what the president can and cannot do.
Now, looking back at his recent tour of Africa, US President Barack Obama skipped Kenya, citing those ICC cases against President Kenyatta. Is this possibly one of the reasons that the Kenyan president won't then go to the US?
No, this has nothing to do with President Obama and his Africa visit. This is a United Nations event. The assembly sits in New York. The U.S. just happens to host the UN the same way we host UNEP here in Nairobi. So this is not a decision to do with the U.S. administration or how the U.S. administration has reacted to various things, including the ICC. I think this is a decision taken simply in respect of the ICC and therefore our ability to deal with the international obligations.
Now, looking at that ICC case a little closely, the statement from State House, if I look at what was said, was that there's been full cooperation with the ICC, and Kenya therefore expects the ICC to show that same cooperation in return. Is there any implication there that Kenya is not happy with the level of cooperation from the ICC?
I think to pretend that the people that have been indicted are ordinary suspects is really that. It's pretending. This is the President of the Republic. This is the Deputy President of the Republic. They have obligations to their people. They have obligations to the international community. And those are things that the court would take into consideration, but it hasn't. Those are things that the court would understand have to be made, but the chamber does not appear inclined to look at it that way. The president has submitted himself and cooperated so far. The deputy president has done the same. He went to The Hague of his own volition. They did not drug him, they did not arrest him, they did not fly him there. He has been attending 3 times, 4 times. After his election, he's gone to The Hague on his own. But the deputy president has also told the court he has obligations required of him by his country. He asked that he be excused from some of the sittings, so he's able to attend to his other obligations. The court agreed unanimously, but the prosecutor and one single NGO from here in Nairobi appealed that. Now the court has yet to decide that appeal, and understandably more than 2 weeks after that. So it makes it impossible then to think that the court is in fact offering the level of cooperation is required. After all, Kenya is a state party to the Rome Statute. It has to be treated with a level of respect. It has to be treated with a level of understanding that it's got its obligations, and it's got to meet those obligations.
Now, going forward, looking at the calls for a withdrawal from the ICC, from Kenya as well as other African countries, how does President Kenyatta hope to balance those calls with his appearance at the ICC? Because this is something that he does have to do.
Well, the Kenyan people articulate their concerns and their voice through their elected members of parliament, through their elected senators, and those two houses of parliament have voiced that voice, so to speak. The African Union is meeting on October 13 to decide that. Obviously, Kenya views the concerns and any statement that comes out of the African Union with a level of respect. If the African Union makes a decision either way, Kenya would have to take that decision seriously. It doesn't at this point say anything about how the president would react to his continued cooperation with the ICC, but obviously if Africa were to pronounce itself either way, then the president would have to heed what Africa says.
All right, Mr. Manoa, SAP, so thank you very much for your time today. We're speaking there to the spokesperson for the Kenyan presidency. Now, shifting to West Africa, more than 80 people were reportedly killed and a dozen others injured in an attack by Islamist militants, Boko Haram, on Tuesday in Nigeria's northeastern Borno state.
According to witnesses, the militants disguised themselves in military uniforms and drove into the town of Banishak in pickup trucks. One local resident said some soldiers from the Joint Task Force tried to flee when the militants arrived.
Soldiers ran into our village trying to hide under the grass. Some of them were handing their guns to us. Some were telling us to give them clothes to change from their uniforms. But we felt they are the JTF and they're supposed to protect us. So Boko Haram attacked and killed our people. Only our women and children escaped, but every other person they met, they killed.
But another resident, Balaguma, said the soldiers tried to warn them of the attack.
All of a sudden we saw soldiers running into our village, telling us to run away, that the attack is very fatal.
The militants razed dozens of buildings by attacking people and setting fires. They also set up checkpoints outside of town to shoot at those who tried to flee. Reports say the militants were heavily armed. They even had anti-aircraft guns. Boko Haram wants to create an Islamic State across Nigeria and has waged deadly insurgency since 2009. A state of emergency was declared in Borno and two neighboring states in May. Since then, communications within the area have been severely disrupted. Meanwhile, attacks have increased recently despite massive military deployment to the worst affected areas.
Now, the African Union on Friday urged the international community to show more support for the strife-torn Central African Republic. AU's Deputy Commissioner for Peace and Security, Al-Hassim Wani, says the poor African country is in a dire situation since it was captured by forces of the Seleka rebel coalition back in March. The Seleka rebels ousted President Francois Bozize after 10 years in power as they took over and installed Seleka leader Michel Djodotia as head of state. The rebels were accused of going on a looting and killing spree, displacing up to 180,000 people. NGOs are hoping the international community will intervene and help the country.
We are willing, we're able to support, but we need conditions which allow us to get our job done and which allow these families to have confidence in the situation. So again, the presence of the international community in full force is extremely important, and we're at a critical time in this country where that support is immediately required.
President Robert Mugabe has begun a purge on corrupt officials in Zimbabwe, demanding arrests be made in a scam involving the former head of the Zimbabwe Mining Development Corporation. Goodwill Masimirembwa is alleged to have solicited a $6 million bribe from Ghanaian firm Gay Nyame Resources in return for a diamond mining license.
As chairman of the ZMDC, which partners all diamond producers in the Marange diamond fields, Masimirembwa is alleged to have promised to use his clout to get a concession for the Ghanaian firm. When the deal fell through, he is accused of threatening the investor with arrest if he set foot in Zimbabwe. Police have launched an investigation, but the case has been put on hold since the complainant is not in the country to record a statement. However, the former head of the ZMDC says he is clean, and when the time comes, he will name the real culprits in the alleged scandal. Activity in the Marange diamond fields, where only a handful of companies are operating, have been shrouded in secrecy. During his term of office, the former MDC Finance Minister Tendai Biti repeatedly claimed that revenue from operations in the mine fields meant for National Treasury were being diverted elsewhere. Masimirembwa, a member of ZANU-PF, is said to be the first casualty as Mugabe implements his zero-tolerance to graft policy. Farai Mwakutuya, CCTV, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Africa Live takes a quick break. When we come back, tension in Egypt as police crack down on militants in Cairo. Growing weary, residents of Abyei up in arms over a delayed referendum on the oil-rich region.
We follow the latest trends in global politics, economics, culture and sport, and how Africa fits into the global picture. You decide what's important.
We need a trade justice.
Africa's future will be determined by Africa.
For women's equal opportunity, for a better life.
We have to change something, and it's not the outsiders.
Talk Africa, a new voice for the world.
Welcome back. Supporters of Egypt's deposed leader Mohamed Morsi held protests in a number of cities on Friday. They were commemorating the clearing of sit-ins at Rabat Square that took place a month ago. The turnout in the rallies was, however, low. Morsi loyalists are still demanding his reinstatement. Clashes erupted between the protesters and security forces but were later dispersed by police and the military. The military is hunting Muslim Brotherhood supporters, a move that supporters say is a strategy to weaken the group.
The numbers are increasing every day because the coup brought corruption to all people. The numbers are proof that this is not just the Muslim Brotherhood. This is the entire society rising against the state's terror.
I am terrified. I can't trust the army. They're sacrificing a nation. They're supporting the division in the country and want people to fight each other.
Sisi wants to reach power. To do so, he is making people scared of another group. He is not fighting terrorism. He is establishing a state of terrorism. Now when he kills thousands, what will the new generation learn? They will learn to love Egypt but hate the army.
Now, for the latest on Egypt, let's cross over to Cairo, where Adil Marouhi is standing by with the latest. Adil, now, after the clashes that we saw yesterday, what's the situation like in and around Cairo today?
Well, overall, it's quite calm. There's a state of security all over the country. There are no rallies so far. There has been some reports that there is minor clashes between supporters and supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood and residents of a specific area in North Egypt. Only 4 were injured, but this is the maximum or the most that has been reported of the events that are going on today. The country is trying to move forward power by starting the school year, and this is what has begun today in 12 cities or 12 governorships in Egypt. The school year has begun, and tomorrow also the entire government, the entire country will have the same going on. And analysts have been expecting that with the beginning of the school year, the protests will even become less.
Now, Adil, if you could give us a quick overview of exactly what's happening across the country. There's been a lot of focus on Cairo specifically, but there are a number of hotspots. Is that the case, and can you tell us where?
Well, basically, Kardassa remains one of the hotspots that security forces are still having a strong presence in. Earlier this morning, they stormed few residential areas where one of the families named Ghazlan has been remaining there, and they are known for their illegal activities. Police have stormed their residence trying to seek sort of proof, weapons, etc., to show their involvement in the attack on the police stations that happened 3 weeks ago. Other than that, the security officials and experts as well have announced that there are several other spots that are on the agenda of the Interior Ministry to storm within the coming days, maybe just few weeks. But of course, they did not announce it for security purposes. So while Kardassa is still going on fading, though, we are expecting to see similar incidents coming on within this week, maybe.
Now, looking at trying to contain issues around violence or any sort of rallies, we did mention earlier the rallies yesterday didn't have a very high turnout. You've mentioned how tensions in Kardassa are lessening to some extent. What are some of the concerns by security there in terms of containing any flashes of attacks?
Well, there is a very strong expectations among most analysts that they would expect to see more attacks going on. They expect to see maybe planting some bombs. They describe it as terrorist plots or terrorist attacks. And they believe that the beginning of the school year might be an incentive for some cells to start moving within that direction. School year in Egypt is big. There are millions of children that go to school daily. They go through public transportation in the streets, in the underground, that has saw 2 reported bombs on Thursday planted there. So there is a sense of tension all over the country. Some people are afraid to let their children go to the schools, at least for the first week, until they have a clearer vision about what is exactly going on in the country. Security forces also, on the other hand, announced that they have a plan to maintain the safety of school students all over the country, which some have praised, but others, like the Muslim Brotherhood protesters, see it as sort of imposing a military regime all over the country. They believe that their children might be afraid to go to schools while a tank is parking at the main gate entrance for the school itself. So it is a big debate, but the general sense for both sides is not, they don't feel that safe anymore.
All right, Adil Marouki, they're live in Cairo. Thanks very much for that update. Now, thousands of RBA residents, along with political parties and civil society organizations in Juba, held peaceful protests on Friday. They're protesting against what they called a delay in the proposed referendum scheduled for October. The polls aimed at determining the status of the RBA region.
In a peaceful manner, the protesters took to the streets, waving banners with messages that requested the global leaders to urgently form an RBA referendum commission and fix the date for the proposed referendum.
I am here because of Abyei referendum. As citizens of South Sudan, we believe Abyei belongs to South Sudan. I am expecting from the government of Sudan to keep the time for referendum. As young people, we are ready to go up to Abyei using our motorcycles. Abyei belongs to South Sudan.
The demonstrators want an Abyei referendum commission to be urgently formed by the African Union, with its chairperson directly nominated by the African body. They also demanded an immediate withdrawal of Sudan armed forces from some parts of Abyei.
There will be sideline meetings of the African Union Security Council with the UN Security Council. We asked them to endorse the African Union proposal, which was proposed by former President of Thabo Mbeki, to be laid as the final status and the final solution for the issue of Abyei referendum in the coming UN General Assembly or the coming UN summit.
The referendum on the oil-rich Abyei area was originally scheduled for 2011. Both Sudan and its southern neighbor failed to agree on who is eligible to vote. While Khartoum demands the participation of the Arab Messiria, South Sudan says only the Dinka Ngok tribal groups from their 9 chiefdoms should participate in the much-anticipated poll. The demonstrators handed a signed petition to the U.S. Embassy, the European Union, the African Union, and the United Nations Mission in South Sudan. The Khartoum government has insisted that the vote should be delayed until legislative and administrative institutions are established. Noel Makugu, CCTV.
Members of the AMISOM Burundian contingent stationed in Baidoa, the capital of the Bay region of Somalia, have begun daily foot patrols around the town to deter militant group Al-Shabaab from carrying out attacks on its residents. Baidoa is an important business route for goods transported from Mogadishu to other parts of the region. Although relatively peaceful, Al-Shabaab sympathizers still pose a threat. It was once a stronghold of the Al-Qaeda-linked insurgents until 2012, when the city was recaptured by government troops. AMISOM's Colonel Mudumo Alexis says over 100 AMISOM peacekeepers and Somali forces are involved in the exercise.
Al-Shabaab has adopted a different type of combat. Instead of raging a classic type of combat, they have adopted asymmetric combat strategy, for example with improvised explosive device. So if the population finds something abnormal, we have technicians with us who can help them very quickly to remove this object in the population. It is in this framework that we are undertaking this kind of patrol.
We've got sport coming up in just a moment, including